Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our transatlantic conversation. For nearly 3 years, we've enjoyed the privilege of hosting Association Transformation for the international membership community. Over nearly 40 hours and 70 plus episodes, we've hosted more than 100 guests from the UK, the USA, Australia, South Africa, and many points in between. Regular listeners will know that over the years, we've covered a huge variety of topics, from change management, leadership relationships, and 4-day weeks, to financial strategy, income generation, and modern governance practice. And of course, who could possibly forget the unicorns and the puppy dogs episode? We really hope you enjoy every episode, and while we will always make our content freely available, remember, subscribe wherever you get your favorite pods. If you would like to lend us your support, you can do so by subscribing to the pod from as little as $5 a month. Now, hopefully it goes without saying that Elisa and I and the whole Association Transformation production team will appreciate your generosity and your ongoing support. To subscribe, visit patreon.com/Association Transformation and choose the monthly subscription level that suits you best. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Association Transformation. And remember, whatever you're up to today, put your members and your mission first. Enjoy the pod. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Association Transformation. I am your only host on this week's episode, Andrew Chamberlain from Elevated. My co-pilot, or more to the point, my captain, is working for a living, is actually getting paid to do a job. So who can blame her for her absence today? But sadly, it means that I am flying solo. Well, flying solo in so much as I'm hosting on my own. I am, however, delighted to be joined in this week's podcast with Julie Krieger, who is the founder of Onsomble, a business consultancy based over in Sydney, Australia, who specializes in working in the non-profit sector, supporting organizations' business development. Hi, Julie. Good to see you. How are you doing?
I am well, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a delight.
I am so pleased to have you, particularly, and I know that our listeners, but all four of them, are going to be bowled over by the fact that you are dialing in live from Sydney at gone midnight, and I think your commitment to the cause is, well, some would say commendable. I would say diabolical. But no, but seriously, I am so grateful for you taking the time to dial in.
It's not every day you get an opportunity like this, Andrew, and how could I not?
Yeah, most people, when they meet me, say that, "Oh, I don't normally get this type of opportunity, Andrew." So ordinarily, this is a transatlantic conversation, but I'm guessing we can call this what can we call this? A Pan-Pacific conversation.
Yes, I suppose, depending on which way you travel.
Well, that's true. I mean, it could just be across the Tasman conversation, depending where we are as well. But so I'm delighted to have you on the show, and we invited you on. Actually, we were chatting before we started recording that we were saying it's quite a few months since we sent out the invite, but because I read your article in the Association's Evolve publication, which for listeners we'll make sure we put a link to it in the notes after we finish recording. But I read your article on resourcing, staffing within the staffing, resourcing within the association environment, and it really resonated with me. And when I read your article, I thought, now here's somebody who's been stalking the halls of membership bodies for too long, because she totally gets it. She totally understands. So tell us, before we talk about how we understand, I do want to get into the detail of it, how we understand association sort of resourcing and staffing. You're from the association world, aren't you?
I am, yes. So I stumbled into this magnificent space about 12 years ago. Prior to that, I was in commercial land in sales and marketing and business development type of roles. And yeah, so about 12 years ago, I fell into the association space working for an association management company. Spent some time there and then went out into the big wide world of working in-house in a large association. And then decided to start my own business, which is Onsomble. So we've been going since 2017. And so we're an association management company. So we know a bit about staffing and resourcing and different models. But I guess our point of difference, or our key point of difference, is that we offer an end-to-end service. It's not just the admin, which I think and the secretariat, which is really quite common, but it's everything right through to CEO. And so I've been acting, as well as others in the team, in those sorts of roles through Onsomble.
Okay. So it's fair to say you've experienced the pleasure, the pain of from all sides of the. Well, it's more than a coin, isn't it? Because actually, your article really gets into the discussion and debate around the value of in-house versus outsourcing versus volunteering. And so during the decade or so that you've been, or actually more than that, the time that you've been working in the non-profit world, and I'm interested, it's interesting to hear you say, you've also got that commercial background. Because the concept of relying on volunteers in a commercial context is almost unheard of. In fact, it's completely unheard of in a commercial context. To have arguably unqualified or misinformed individuals coming into your business to help run it would just seem like insanity. And yet, here we are in the membership environment, and people will always hear me say, yes, we're not for profit, but we're also not for loss. We're still businesses. And yet often the dependence on volunteers, willing or unwilling, to roll their sleeves up and to help with the day-to-day running of the organization can often be, many organizations can often be left with no choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we seeing more the trends as you've kind of in the years that you've been working and advising organizations on the sourcing or the resourcing of human capital? Have you seen much? What's the trend? What does the trend look like? Have we gone to more in-house? Are we now seeing a shift away? What's it looked like over the last sort of 10 plus years?
I think it varies greatly depending on the size of an organization and its stage of evolution. So, we're working predominantly with the smaller scale associations, industry bodies, membership-based. And so a couple of them are very sophisticated, and they've got the right people in the right roles as paid employees and that sort of thing. But most often they're very much in the combination of volunteer and a bit of outsourcing. Right. I haven't seen that slip away, and I think potentially even as a result of the pandemic, dare I mention it, people have been a little bit more cautious about hiring their own in-house staff because of a degree of uncertainty around, the future and revenue and a keenness, I guess, to avoid risk.
Yeah. But do we not think is that not false economy potentially? Because by bringing in, and I don't mean to be disparaging about volunteers, because I'm certainly not disparaging. I think the work that volunteers, we recognize volunteering as part of the lifeblood of any membership organization. But, as I go back to my point about bringing in unqualified personnel or inexperienced personnel into your business, to me, that doesn't sound like mitigating risk. That actually sounds like potentially we're increasing our risk. Am I being unfair?
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's fair, especially when you consider that a lot of times, in fact, the vast majority of occasions when volunteers are involved, is at the most senior levels on the board,
Yes.
as chair, as president, as directors.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've all seen it. You've been in this space for a long time too. And the politics, the personalities,
Uh-huh.
you throw into the mix occasionally. You've got somebody who founded an association and,
Mm-hmm.
the passion and the connection and the sense of, I don't want to say ownership, that's unfair, but that real sense that it's kind of their baby. So all of those things combined can be fabulous and can be really challenging.
Yeah, because I remember, I mean, I remember when, working as a chief exec and having discussion, shall we say? I wouldn't say a run-in, but we had, vigorous debate about, my sense of ownership and versus the volunteers or the members. And it's funny because I remember saying, yeah, but I only have the interest of the success of this organization at heart because it pays my mortgage. I have to. It doesn't pay anybody else's except the team who are being paid by the business. So,
Yes.
that's that. I remember that sort of striking a note with volunteer with board members, thinking, oh yeah, actually, it may be a different driver, but equally, staff can have. Well, actually, you may share the same drivers, the same reasons to want to see the organization's success. But arguably, staff have a far more personal investment in the success of an organization, of a membership organization, than sometimes volunteers do. And do you not think? I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you not think sometimes? And this is going to sound harsh, but that's what I do. Do you not think that sometimes, if rather than having sort of willing volunteers, we sometimes end up with willing hobbyists?
Yes, absolutely. And in any board that I've ever worked with or alongside, there's a really wide range of commitment levels, of interest levels, of engagement, of all of those sorts of elements from director to director. There's typically, the couple of people who put the hand up for everything, who know the business, who, hopefully make wise decisions with the right, perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are those who sort of come along for the ride, and there's some that are there because it looks good on a CV or, it's by no means the majority, but you get that in every organization. You get a really wide range of reasons for people being there and degrees of commitment, knowledge, skill.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a rare board, I find, that has that maturity, I suppose, and business sense to see those things and to know how to apply the rigor around that they need to ensure consistency, succession, all of that sort of sensible stuff that they don't have to do. They should.
They could.
There's nobody else. They're the bosses, so if they choose not to do it, it doesn't happen.
And I think sometimes I think you're spot on there because, a rare board that recognizes, and through no fault of their own, because I think so much of this is culture driven, so much of this is, the organic evolution of an organization. There's none of this that we're talking about is necessarily criticism of personality. This is about just circumstance. We all know that most membership organizations have evolved from that voluntary foundation. But I think sometimes you get that, and I used to push back against this all the time as a staffer in my various roles, which was, we're here to complement one another. And yet, you guys are bringing to the table your knowledge, your expertise of the industry or the sector or the profession that this association is serving. And we're here to run the nuts and bolts, to deliver get it done.
Yeah.
But sometimes I often felt that there was this unnecessary competition between, volunteers and paid employees and it wasn't necessarily healthy competition. It was a real undermining sort of culture that served nobody any good, and that failure to sort of on volunteers to fail to recognize, but staff also to fail to recognize the value that the volunteer team can bring, I think always ends, that I've seen it so many times, and you'll have seen it as well, where it just destabilizes the success of the organization. It doesn't necessarily run it into the ground, nothing, it's not going to collapse overnight, but you do see that organizations that are faltering because they're not really recognizing the opportunities of complementing one another, and they only ever see the challenges of sort of competing against each other. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, are you seeing that as well, or?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I don't mean to sit here and sort of
No,
only raise negative points.
There's a couple of positive points at the end, I'm sure. No.
Yeah. Just give me a moment. No. Yeah, we do see all of that play out on a daily basis, and you see people get burnt on both sides of that fence.
Yeah.
And particularly where an organization hasn't evolved to the point where they've got really good structures in place and good procedures and policies and so on, which a lot of them don't. If they're smaller and they have come through from that purely volunteer, goodwill, passion kind of run organization, they maybe haven't got to that point yet. And so you find your boards are involved in the nitty-gritty quite often. They're involved way too deeply into the weeds. They maybe then think, oh, we need a CEO or an executive officer, bring someone in, but then don't necessarily furnish them with the empowerment, and the structure, the delegations of authority and the budget and, all the tools that actually empower them to go ahead, take the vision and make it happen. So, frustrations on both sides, I suppose.
Yeah. What's the balance then? Where it can be, yeah. What's the balance? As you sort of say, as you're talking, I was thinking, yeah, that all sounds horribly familiar. I remember my first CEO position thinking, oh my God. Yeah. But what's the balance? Where do you get, what's the balance in terms of that sort of negates this unnecessary tension and creates that harmony? And I don't mean the artificial harmony where we're just dancing around each other. I mean real sort of, what's the balance where you can strike, where you can have informed volunteers, informed staff? Where'd you get that? Where'd you strike that balance?
So I think there's a couple of things. One is that people need to know how to do their particular job in structure. So board directors need to have some training. They need to know what the difference is between the sorts of questions they should be asking as a director versus as an executive or a staffer or somebody involved in the day-to-day running of an organization. That's really critical to keep that mindset at the right level, to keep the focus on strategy and the driving of the organization rather than the doing.
Yeah.
So training is really important. And similarly for the team doing the work, of course, they need to know what they're doing. But you would assume if you're hiring people either on an outsourced basis or on an in-house basis, they're going to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. And I think the second of the two big things that I think are important, critical, is around having the structure, the policies, the processes, and even down to the systems, the means of communicating, so that it's visible to the board what the executive officer is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Not down to the,
not the operational minutiae. No.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah, but they've got a really clear line of sight to the projects that are on the table, the progress against them. That hopefully they've got KPIs and all the measurement tools are in place. I think that's critical.
I think I would also, though. I mean, I would apply the same principle to staff and visibility of what volunteers are doing. Absolutely.
Yeah. Goes both ways for sure. Yeah.
Because I think sometimes there's this onus of, well, we've got to hold staff accountable, which is totally fine. But I would suggest that the opportunity to understand, what directors, or we say directors because we're talking primarily in a board context, but
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
understand what directors are doing, I
Mhm.
think goes a big way to sort of clearing the fog, as it were, in terms of understanding, and recognizing that what I do as a staffer does complement what they're doing as volunteer leaders. Because I think
Yeah.
sometimes there's that haze. Well, what do they actually do? What value do they add? And therefore, then it can begin to sort of breed resentment when you're asked a question by someone you think isn't doing anything.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Simply because you're not aware of it. Yeah. So communication up and down, or, left and right, or whatever way you want to look at it, is really important. And I think where you've got say, a CEO or a senior, leader of that ilk in place, and you've got other people in the team, it's really important for that senior leader to be a conduit between the board and the staff.
yeah,
And that's whether they're volunteer or outsourced or in-house, no matter what the model, it's
yeah,
really important that, you're absolutely right, that whatever goes on at a board meeting within the bounds of what
yeah.
can be shared and so on. But in terms of strategy, direction, decisions, key decisions that are being made about, projects or activities, it's got to be funneled up to the board and back down to the team, and have everyone pointing in the same direction.
So you say that, post-pandemic, we've kind of seen some hesitancy to invest in-house,
Mm-hmm.
and an increased reliance on the volunteer side. But are you then suggesting there's also been a more willingness to engage in outsourcing?
Look, I can't necessarily say that that's been something that I've anecdotally heard is across the board,
Hmm.
but for us at Onsomble, I guess I've seen that, and I've seen it more so than before the pandemic, in the sense of people outsourcing on a project by project basis.
Yeah.
So potentially not even, signing a 3-year service agreement, but saying, I've got this discrete piece of work. It needs to be done by here. Can you help us? And that's got its advantages, but it's also got
Oh
disadvantages.
yes, 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 indeed. Oh my God, yeah. So, but you described the work that you guys do as actually, right across the spectrum of portfolio responsibility,
Yeah.
from, the administration function, the membership engagement function, right through to the leadership on
Yeah.
staff side.
Yeah.
So I mean, arguably, to a group of volunteer leaders, ostensibly, there's doesn't really matter, does it, whether you're contracted in-house or you're contracted externally? Or are there
Exactly.
nuances that, if listeners are thinking, well, actually, we don't want to take that risk, but we quite like the idea of delegating our everything on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis, is there a nuance there that I'm missing, or because it seems like quite a straightforward solution to me? I mean, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the sweet spot. Give it to someone else to worry about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I obviously think it's got huge merit.
Well, I would expect you to say so.
So there you go. There's my little nugget of positivity. Everyone should outsource their whole team. No, look, it's not for every organization, but for those of a particular, as I said at the beginning, scale or phase of evolution, or if they find themselves in a position where they're about to embark on a different path, different strategy or whatever, and they're not yet certain exactly of what support they need. It's a good way to sort of buy flexibility, I suppose, in the structure. So it's definitely got that advantage. Having said that, we had a client fairly early on in our life cycle, and we built them up. We had a team of 4 people working pretty much full time on them. And then they decided, right, thank you very much. We've grown, we've got what we need, and we'll take it from here. And so we came to an agreement around the staffing, and they went.
What rationale did they give for that?
Yeah. I think it was really around having a sense of control. I think, again, you talk about culture, and I know you've done other episodes on culture. I think it was a cultural thing. I think there was a level of, that kind of mentality of, if we can't see it up close, we can't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We can't see it. It's either not working or it's broken potentially, and we won't know until it's devastating.
Yes. until it's ours to have control over directly. So look, as I say, it's a cultural thing. It's neither right nor wrong. And in some ways, we kind of see it as a bit of a client life cycle. If that organization came on with, whatever it was, 1,000 members or something close to that, and by the time they moved away from us and went out on their own, that had grown to about 5,000.
Thanks for growing our business by 80%. Bye.
Yeah, don't think that I wasn't sad.
Oh, I would be spitting feathers, quite frankly.
Well, it is. Look, you can get annoyed about these things, or you can see it.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did a good job, and it's kind of part of the sad cycle of life. Clients come and then clients go, and it's a sign that things went right, rather than
yes, absolutely. Well, I applaud your positivity and the ability to reflect on that. Whereas I would still be counting the dollars that we lost. But there you go. I guess that's.
Well, one door opens, one closes, another one opens.
Indeed. That's why you're recording podcasts at midnight. So I mean, it's I don't think it's a loaded question. What's the sweet spot? I know what you're going to say. Well, it depends. I know that. I know it depends on the size and the scope and the journey that the organization is on. I understand that. But let's say you were a pretty average membership organization. We've got a few thousand members. Got a nice turnover. Activities is just happening. The usual stuff. What's the sweet spot there, in your opinion? Is it a blend, or is it blend achievable, I guess, or is that too many cooks, as it were?
No, it's all achievable in my view, with the right systems, structures, policies, etc. So I think in terms of sweet spot, for us, for a business like ours, where we do typically like to have a team embedded rather than just, X number of hours a week of secretariat or whatever it might be. So for us, you've got your senior leader, you've got somebody doing the nuts and bolts of the administrative work and the membership mechanics.
Yes.
Not so much the actual outreach and engagement work, but the mechanics of it. And then the ability to bring in specialists and send away specialists once you've done for project work or on a needs basis. If you need somebody to help you develop an advocacy program, for example, then it gives the smaller organizations so much flexibility to be able to say, okay, that's what we needed, we've done, and now we'll shift our focus. So I think, it's sort of, for us, it's a team of maybe, 3-4 people. And they may not all work full time, or they may scale up and down according to demand. If you've got a conference coming up, or, whatever it might be, you might increase the hours. And then at quieter times, it's nice to have some degree of flexibility to say, right, well, we don't need that one full time, but we do need that one to step up. So it's just, I think for those who need that flexibility, once you start getting into a bigger scale of an organization, though, there is definitely an argument that, there's specialist roles. They're big enough that they need multiple people. It's not going to make sense to outsource the work of an organization that has 50 staff.
Yeah. No. I'd like to see that try. I mean, why not pilot that? I mean, I think that's because actually, I mean, surely the principles are the same, aren't they?
Yeah.
Business breathes in, breathes out. Having that flexibility, so you're not then having to constantly be worrying about keeping. I mean, I remember, cash flow was always a headache in one organization because we would peak. We had, our membership renewals and our annual conference would happen within sort of 2 or 3 months of each other. So you'd have a deluge of income. And
yep.
All that there, but then you had to eke it out. And so cash flow would sometimes become a headache if the education program throughout the rest of the year wasn't necessarily performing as planned.
Yeah.
So to be able to have that flexibility to breathe, if you like, and say, well, actually, we don't need to be keeping on X number of staff right now because it's not that we can't afford it, but we don't necessarily have, maybe our reserves are fluctuating as well because we're investing in X, Y, and Z. I don't know. It feels to me that, I don't know. I mean, I would like to invite any of our listeners who are leading organizations of 50 plus members of staff to volunteer to lay them all off and go with this model, and we'll see how it goes. But
I am very happy to give that a go.
There you go. Julie's got her hand up. She's like, yeah, give me a shout, and we'll see how that we'll try that exercise.
I'm free between 1 a.m. and about.
There you
7.
go. That's right. I've got to spare 6 hours. We can make it work. Well, look, listen, thank you so much for joining me in the middle of the night. I really appreciate it. It's one of those. It is one of those subjects that you look and you think, actually, if you don't get your resourcing right, everything falters. Things stall, things stumble, tensions arise. People, and I think the resourcing coupled with what you've said there, this having the systems in place, and if no other system, as far as I'm concerned, no other system other than the comms system, how you talk to each other, and understand what you're doing is such a vital piece of the puzzle. You don't get any of that right, or if you spend too much time tinkering with it and not committing to it, I think, you, as I say, you begin to see those organizations. You're laughing there. Do you see tinkering is something that people love to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But listen, thank you so much for joining me. I've really appreciated your time. And I know Elisa is going to be spitting feathers because she's out there making money while we're here having a chat. I can't think of a better way to spend my evenings.
Nor can I. Thank you so much.
It's so much. There's a bit of electric cattle prod in there going on
to keep me awake.
Yeah. And so, Julie, if people want to reach out and connect with you, obviously they can find you on LinkedIn. But your website is
yes. So it's onsomble.com.au, and Onsomble is spelt with O's, so it's ONSOMBLE. .com.au.
.com.au. Please tell me why. Why is it spelled with O's and not E's?
Look, it's a little bit esoteric, and I don't want people to judge me harshly.
Don't worry. There is nothing but harsh judgment in the association transformation community, I assure you. But
nobody told me that before I came here.
You can't now tell us half a story. So
no, look, it was I actually the business started life under a different name, and a couple of years in I thought, you know what, this sounds very dry and stale, and I'm ready to make it into something a bit more modern and a bit more quirky potentially, and I like the play on the word ensemble, meaning together, because it really is about that team, our team becoming the association's team rather than a sort of consultancy model necessarily. It's really more about a cohesiveness, and the O is just nicely rounded, and it's such a warm sort of happy shape.
You're right. We are going to judge you harshly.
Oh.
No, seriously. Listeners, check it out. Onsomble.com.au. All the O's. I love it. Thank you so much again. And
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And so concludes another episode of Association Transformation, our Pan-Pacific conversation this week. Remember to check out all our other episodes. I think we've now got a back catalogue. I think this I think could be episode 76. We're fast approaching the century. You can find us on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Pods, anywhere you find your podcasts. And please click subscribe. You can also check us out on our YouTube channel as well. So, yeah, that's us for this week. Hopefully next week I'll be not flying solo, because this whole intro-outro thing, it just confuses me and worries me. But what I do know to say, because Elisa writes it down for me, is until next time, put your members and your mission first.